Hello class, it's Demetrius Wilson again with Human Relations, Communication and Human Relations, Chapter 6. Communication is always the key. And when can you communicate? When do you need to communicate? Early and often. As always, we start with our learning objectives, explain the crucial role of communication at work and what occurs when miscommunication happens. So communication is when I want ABC to be translated or transferred to another individual and they understand ABC. But miscommunication occurs when I say ABC to the individual and they hear XYZ. That's miscommunication. It's not communication. Compare and contrast successful and unsuccessful listening skills, right? Are you an active listener, or do you wade off and start thinking about the laundry that you have to do or stuff that you have to do at work, all kind of different things. Explain the importance of timing in regard to messages, right? Sometimes it's just not the right time for certain messages that you relay. Examine the role of nonverbal communication. Remember that you want to trust the nonverbal cues as opposed to the verbal cues. So if I'm like this, frowned up, and I say, I like you, I really don't like you, you have to trust those nonverbal cues. Additional learning objectives: identify the functions of nonverbal communication, right? How do they affect business? How do they affect your personal life, life at school? Outline strategies for communication within an organization, and explain the importance of intercultural communication in today's professional world. So communication and miscommunication. Communication is giving and receiving of ideas, feelings, and information among people. Excuse me. It includes listening as well as speaking, right? So what people typically forget is that communication involves listening, not just speaking your mind and speaking for everybody to hear your point. Miscommunication is making false assumptions about what is being communicated, right? I said, go to the store and get me some milk, right? What was communicated in your mind was get milk and donuts because they go well together. It damages human relations and wastes time and money in the work industry, and that's 100% for sure. Typically, a lot of the things that managers have to deal with are miscommunications between employees, and it's really unfortunate that that they can't do other things, and when they have to, as opposed to improving processes and procedures, when they're wasting time dealing with bickering employees. So here's how it works. These are the factors of communication. So you see on the left side you have the sender, right, Miss Mary Jo. Her attitudes and values go over to the receiver, which is the listener. Conscious communication, right, goes back and forth between the two. Unconscious communication, those nonverbal cues as well. And timing, right? So we're going to learn a little bit about timing and when you should relay certain information. Somebody has a death or a tragedy in the family, you don't just pop up and say, John, I need for you to do these TPS reports right away. Online communication. How are we communicating right now? We're communicating online. It increases effectiveness of communication, but there also are some drawbacks, which I'll touch on. It encourages flexibility for workers and for students. Eliminates barriers of time and distance, right? So typically in my company we use a lot of email and use a lot of instant message, right? So it's no difference from me sending an email or instant message to somebody across the hall than me sending an email or instant message to somebody in our Texas office. What are potential problems? Personalization and tone of messages can get lost, right? So if you're not having that face-to-face conversation or over the phone conversation, sometimes the tone can get kind of misconstrued and maybe somebody thinks something occurred that didn't. Technical glitches and human error can delay messages, right? Some things are stuck in your outbox because they're too large, or maybe you just sent it to the wrong person. And miscues lead to misunderstandings, right? And then they snowball into a bigger and badder effect. And we're in this new instant generation where everybody needs a response now. So we'll always talk about how the digital divide and how computers and technology have made things better, but how they made things worse, right? You can't really detach from your job because you have an iPhone or a BlackBerry that you take home with you, and every time you hear that bing, you have to check it to ensure that nothing terrible happens. So they're good, they're bad, You can always say, oh, it's great we have cell phones, we're instant, you can do anything, you can search anything, and this and that. But is it truly better than the days of the pay phones or the days of the AirTouch and J&J beepers and having to go to the pay phone? So that's all left to your determination. But I wouldn't be too mad about going back to those days and just get a little bit of breath of fresh air. Selective listening, and we all do it. The listener deliberately chooses what he or she wants to pay attention to, right? You pay attention to the stuff you're interested in, and you don't pay attention to things that you're not. What are the causes? Well, one cause, and one of the very funniest videos that you'll see, I have one on information overload, is information overload. Is the listener is overwhelmed with incoming information and has to decide which information will be processed and remembered, right? So much information coming into your brain that you have to decide, hey, which one am I going to take? Am I going to take A or am I going to take B? Bad communication habits. It could be bad communication habits coming from the manager, or bad listening skills coming from yourself. Countered by keeping one's focus on the speaker, right? So if you're focusing on the speaker, focus on them. We're not in the classroom for this class, but there's a phenomenon that says if it's one person speaking and a lot of people listening, like in our class, like let's say there's 42 people listening, that people they have the tendency to kind of, go this way, go that way, and start thinking about other things. Oh, I have to do the laundry. Oh, I have to feed the kids. Oh, I have work tomorrow, right? And also taking notes, and that's my favorite because that always works for me. To take notes, I review them at the end, and usually after that, then it really sinks in. Reasons for tuning out. Prejudice, unwillingness to listen to members of a group the listener believes are inferior, right? So a lot of times people say, oh, this person's inferior, I don't want to report to them. And I've seen that many times in my workplace, whether it be because of my nationality or whether it be because of my age. They're just like, hey, I'm tuning this guy out because he doesn't know anything, and I've been here this many years, and I just don't want to hear what he has to say. Red flag words, words that bring immediate negative emotional response from the listener because of strong beliefs on the subject, right? So some people have these little touchy subjects and these hot buttons, and if you press the hot button, bam, they're all over the place. Misconception that listening is passive behavior. It's not passive, it's active. And they talk about listening with a certain intensity, and that may not be a word that you've heard before in regards to listening, but if you have some intensity, like you're sitting forward, you're listening, you're intent, you're trying to key in on the words and learn and consume all the information that's being given. So active listening, which is what you should be doing, is listening with greater concentration, less tolerance for distractions, and more feedback to the speaker, right? So you establish eye contact, you're looking, if you don't understand something, then you're asking questions. So the timing of messages, emotional timing. If you have emotional readiness of the listener to hear a message, are you ready to actually hear the message? Situational timing, listener situation when a message is received. Privacy is a key element. So for instance, if I'm writing somebody up, I don't make it be known to everybody. I said, send them an email, hey, meet me over here in the conference room. Now if other people find out, it's only because they told them, but I never let that information out about people's private information. Relevance of timing. Communication should fit the other topics being discussed. So you don't say, okay, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And about your attendance, right, in a meeting with everybody else. Not the appropriate time to bring it up. And filtering, and we also do filtering as well, just like selective listening. Hearing only what one wants to hear results in failure to receive messages correctly, right? And it happens all the time. I send somebody an email, and they only take part of the email. And then they don't do the second part, and I send them an email back. I say, hey, you didn't do this. And they say, well, the email said this. And I said, no, you should slow down and read the email because it says this, right? And that's sometimes things can get lost in translation, and sometimes people blame it on emails. And no, typically the same people who miss things in emails are the same people who miss things when you're speaking directly to them or sending them an instant message. So communicating without words. So nonverbal ways of communicating without speaking. Gestures, right? Gestures, body language. What does this mean? That means timeout, right? What does this mean? Hey, leave me alone. I don't know. Facial expressions. You make funny facial expressions, which I do from time to time. People can tell that you're disgruntled or you're mad, and they can tell by looking at your face. Nonverbal signals indicate degrees of self-confidence, Maturity, fear, and other key qualities used to judge a person. So for instance, I would always have meetings. And I would come into the meeting and I was talking and everything. This one lady, she would sit back in the chair and she would fold her arms and just look at me, right? Like, I'm closed for business. I've been here 25 years, and I don't really want to hear anything that you have to say. I'm just here because I have to be here, right? And I would always tease her about it, because I knew exactly like what her stance was, and she was always doing that since day one. So functions of nonverbal messages: show the speaker's attitudes and emotions, more powerful and honest than words. So remember I said trust the nonverbal cues. Feelings and emotions communicated unconsciously, right? So you stomp on the ground, you pound your hand, and obviously means that you're mad, that you're angry. Internal climate, the way one feels within themselves, right? So if you woke up on the wrong side of the bed and you're mad, that those nonverbal cues are going to indicate that to all the rest of us. And they can be shown easily. You know, I tell people all the time, you're predictable, right? I can tell when you're going to have a bad day, and it's so evident. It's so easy to tell. And people say, "Oh, I'm not predictable. I'm not this. I'm not." Yeah, you are. I can tell by the nonverbal cues in your face. Clarify messages, understanding and interpreting meaning and context. So context is just a point of reference when communicating. So that's like a starting point. Functions of nonverbal messages shows the speaker's reactions to the listeners, right? So how do you react to the listeners, right? Are they falling asleep? Are they engaged? All kind of different things. Differences in emotional reaction, variation in acceptance, approval, and comfort level, right? So if you're, speaking in front of a class and, you're asking for feedback and you hear crickets, which when I ask questions I often do hear, right? Are you still comfortable to keep moving forward? And so it obviously takes a different type of talent level and skill to do so. And intensity, which I spoke of earlier, is the degree to which one shows serious concentration or emotion. So I'm concentrated on what Professor Wilson is saying, and I really intent on knowing and understanding exactly what this topic is about. Nonverbal messages about self-esteem, right? So we always go back to self-esteem and communication. So nonverbal communication signals one's self-esteem level, right? How do you feel about yourself? Do you feel good? Do you feel not too great? There are no substitutes for genuinely building up one's self-esteem, right? That's a key ingredient to being a successful manager, a successful employee, a successful student, successful individual. An individual with high self-esteem will be listened to more effectively. So am I more effective speaking in my normal manner, or if I say an individual with high self-esteem will be listened to more effectively, and then I put my head down, right? So maybe you see that person doesn't have high self-esteem, or their confidence level is low, and you're probably not going to listen to them as intently as you would in the first example. Show improvement in the overall communication process. So gestures and their meaning indicate open or closed attitude of people, right? Am I open to things or am I not? The true leader of the group, right? So just because a person is maybe leading a meeting or whatever doesn't mean they're the true leader of the group, and we can always truly see who that leader is. How open a person is to physical contact, right? So if you come up and touch somebody and they do like that and shy away, then they're not open to physical contact. Please stop touching them on the shoulder before you end up in HR. Categories are illustrators, used to clarify a point; regulators, used to control the flow of communication; displays, used like nonverbal punctuation marks; and emblems, used in a specific manner because they have a specific meaning. So I love this one, the zones of distancing. So you see public distance is 12 inches to 25 and beyond. Social distance, close 4 to 7, far 7 to 12. Personal distance, close 1.5 to 2, and far 2 to 4. And intimate differences is going to be 0 to 6 and 6 to 18, right? So spacing between people. So if you're intimate, somebody's right in this zone right here, hopefully it's your significant other or somebody you're very, very comfortable with, because typically you may not want somebody within that zone that you're not comfortable with. So distance between speakers. So distance of physical space that maintains between other people and oneself. People are very uncomfortable when first 3 bubbles are violated. So if you jump in my bubble, hey, I'm gonna get uncomfortable, right? I'm sure you all know and have come in contact with those close talkers, right? They get right there in your face and like, whoa, you know, hey buddy, back up. I don't want you to be that close. And distancing issues vary geographically and culturally. Sometimes some cultures like it really close, and other cultures are distanced far away. All right, so you'll need to review the last 4 slides on your own. That's 17, 18, 19, and 20, and read the chapter. As always, have a good day and a great week.